Hi everyone, it's Marla at Twinstrology, and I'm actually at the conference Twin Flames Together in Boston, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I'm going to be talking to two twin flames that I met in Chicago, actually, who came to the conference, and they're in union. They just got married a couple months ago, so congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
And I wanted to talk to them today because I know a lot of you have doubt sometimes on this journey about, can this be done? Can we reunite? And I see people in the groups posting, are there any twin flames that are actually together? Can you please open up and talk about what the journey's like? So we're going to be talking to Rob and Angie today, and they're going to share a little bit of their story and their road to union. And they're not teachers. Like most of the twins in union that you see out there are quote unquote teachers. I say not teachers yet because we know that this is going to be coming for you guys. But right now they've been just living their life, just being twins in the everyday world.
Yeah.
So, let's start at the beginning. When was it that you guys met?
I will take that first. I had moved to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, from Edmonton, just a little bit north, because I was drawn there. Don't know the real reason why. About 3 years after that, Angie, also from the Edmonton area, moved to Calgary. We ended up in the same apartment tower downtown Calgary, is where we were living. She posted a note in the laundry room in the basement that was just one of those ones you see saying, "Hi, I'm new. I'd like to meet people."
Mm-hmm.
And with the phone number that you tear off the bottom. Okay. Now I always ignore those because I'm thinking, okay, they need to meet people.
Crazy
I've got my
person.
Yeah, but I felt compelled to tear off the little phone number and make a phone call. And I met Angie on the phone from the note in the laundry room.
Wow, I love that.
And it was instant connection. We just knew we knew each other, but we didn't know how. We didn't really sort of believed in soulmates. I wasn't awake at all. I knew nothing about spirituality. Didn't know anything about twin flames. Had never even heard the concept. But we just had this instant connection.
And this was back in 1997 that we were meeting, quote unquote, for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent a year together dating. It was quite rocky. I had just come out of, I call it the tail end of a time of spiritual growth. I didn't know what to call it at that time. I'd say nowadays I'd look at it and call it a time of many downloads. And I was learning all on my own, not with any formal groups. And at the end of that exhaustive process was when I met Angie. So I was spiritually supercharged at that level for that time.
And it seems like, from what I hear talking to other people in my own experience, it's like you start to awaken and that kind of draws your twin. It's like some kind of homing device.
Yes.
Like I'm starting to get ready for you to come in.
I had just started awakening before I met him. I actually just about a month before I met him discovered the book Conversations with God, for anybody that's familiar with that whole series. And I was just starting to read and learn about past lives and soulmates and spirit and connections. And then I met him a month later. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's exactly how it works. You just start to awaken yourself, and then I like your term, a homing device. It's totally what it was like.
Everything is synchronized.
Yes, completely.
So I made the phone call, and we talked and talked and talked and talked and talked, and it was just very few days later. I go out and I hike in the mountains. I climb mountains. I have fun in the mountains. I invited her out for a day in the mountains. Just wanted to take her for, I call it a tour of the Rocky Mountains, so that I can introduce people to the areas that I know and love. So we went out and had what turned out to be a almost beyond magical day in the mountains. Things happened in the mountains from a natural point of view that had never happened to me before. thunderclouds being illuminated by the sun and reflecting backwards in the wrong direction across lakes. The sunlight was amazing that day. I've never had a day like that since.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from meeting somebody in the foyer of an apartment building going, hi, we've only talked on the phone, now we're going to spend all day together.
Mm-hmm.
How's that going to turn out? It was
Magical.
It was a once in a lifetime day.
Yeah. It was 15 hours in the mountains. And by the time the day ended at 11 at night, we were in our elevator, and I was on the 11th floor and he was on the 36th,
36th floor.
And it was so hard to say goodbye at the 11th floor because we just didn't want to separate, but we knew we just met. We can't go spend the night together. But already the magnetic pull was so strong after our first day together.
Yeah.
It was so strong. So then the next day the magnetic pull sucked us together, and we were together inseparable from then for almost a year.
Yeah, we dated for a solid year. Mm-hmm. Although that solid year had a lot of rocky moments in it. There were some warm weeks and some not so warm weeks, if you want to call it that. It was really hard. Our energies were nowhere near aligned, and not that one was stronger or weaker or anything else like that. We were just very different.
Yeah, and so the difference in your opinions or the difference in your personalities would cause conflict.
Yeah.
So at some points, you were polar opposites in some areas. Is that it? And so you needed to balance these polar opposites.
We'd go from being very close to being very scared.
Yeah. What also would pull us together or pull us apart is the spirituality part would pull us together, like this bond that we didn't even understand.
The magic,
soul bond,
really.
Yes. But then the ego parts is what would break us apart. He was very intense in a lot of ways. I was intense in my own ways and very unhealed. I had grown up in an abusive home. I had been sexually abused. So I had so much trauma that was undealt with. And of course, being with Ymir triggered everything. I thought I had gone through 4.5 years of counseling and dealt with everything. Meeting him, I realized I had dealt with nothing. I had just triggered everything. So it was this constant push-pull, together, apart, because of the draw of the connection, but then the pull of the ego stuff.
Yeah, and then how would you, so the ego would pull you apart, and then would one of you reach out to the other one?
Pretty much. That's what I would say. One of us, after we'd been disconnected for a day or two or three, one of us would go to the other one's place and pop a little note under the door, and we'd reconnect again and continue on.
Mm-hmm. And I was much more the runner because I had all the fear and all the mirror stuff coming at me that I didn't even understand that, he would trigger all this stuff inside of me. So I was the one that would run away, and then he would pull me back, and the love would be there again, and then I would run again because of all the fear. So it was a constant.
And were you sharing with Rob at the time why, when you would run, when you would need your space, would you tell him what was going on with you, or would you make something up?
As much as I understood, I would tell him. He knew from the very beginning, about the sexual abuse, and then it would all be triggered, and I'd be having flashbacks and just so many emotions. But then there was times that I was terrified and fearful and didn't even know why. So then I would just run and not tell him anything. Or I'd be very mean to him and push him away because I didn't know what was going on inside of me. I didn't know. Also, I'm highly introverted. He's more extroverted. So he'd want to be together all the time. And I'd be like, no, I need my space, but not understand that I needed space. So I would get mean as a way to push him away to get space. But then I'd be like, okay, now I'm ready for you. And then I'd come back. So it was this constant back and forth of.
Right. And you still loved him just as much the whole time, right?
Absolutely.
Your feelings never waned.
No.
And Rob, how did it feel when she pushed you away?
Well, I didn't really quite understand that. Being more extroverted and not quite understanding an extreme introvert, how I solve things is I get closer to people. So if someone's having trouble or struggling or not feeling good, I get closer. I get snugglier. I did not have any concept of respecting space. And so
Boundaries
and space. So every time I would try to do what I would do for myself or for my usual group of friends who are quite extroverted as well, I was doing exactly the opposite of what Angie needed. And I didn't understand that. whether I was too young or not aware enough, or maybe I hadn't listened to Angie in the way that she had spoken and understood. I just kept on doing, quote unquote, the wrong thing.
And did you feel rejected? Did that trigger your any abandonment issues for you?
I did feel a bit rejected, but I wasn't taking it personally because I'd do my own self checks and realize that it wasn't necessarily me, but I was very, very frustrated that I couldn't do something to help Angie. I felt helpless to help her.
Did you ever feel like, gosh, I really seem to trigger her a lot. Maybe she'd be better off without me?
It took a long time to get there. After about a year of dating, I realized that it was just not going anywhere. It was a very circular pattern of acceptance and rejection, acceptance and rejection with no resolution, no real hope. And so I took out my box of Kleenexes one time, invited her to my apartment, and we sat down at the table, and I very kindly let her go. Almost as if I was talking to one of my employees at work. I work as a manager, I hire, I fire, and I very, very gently fired her.
Yes, you did.
Like you, you're a great person, but this isn't working. Here's a Kleenex, you have to go.
Yeah. And did you guys meet each other's families and friends?
I met his families. You didn't really meet mine at that point. And actually, it's funny you're asking that question because that was one of the two things I said to him that I would miss was his parents because I fell completely in love with his parents.
I was wondering if, like, were people saying, God, that relationship's not going anywhere, or, you know, why are you guys dating because you seem to, like, break up? Was there any of that going on?
Not really.
No. It was more behind closed doors, our push and pull stuff. When we were in front of people, we looked like we were all together and fine and happy and in love, which we were, but they didn't understand all the other dynamics that were going on.
Right.
Most of the time, the difficult dynamics were done just between her and I. So the outside world didn't see much of that.
Okay.
And one of the other reasons they didn't see that also is another dynamic that was pulling us apart is I was really growing spiritually. I had just started taking Reiki after we met. I started seeing angels and auras. I mean, there was one night I was with him and I said, why do you have green and yellow colors around you? He's like, oh, that's my aura. And I'm like, you're what? I didn't even know. He knew more than I did about this stuff. So, I mean, my whole world was just upside down. He would come home from work every day and say, like, I feel like I have to get reacquainted with you every day when I come home because you're a different person. So I was growing so much in a different direction than he was because he was at a job that's very intense, very managerial, very much required him to be in his head, be logical, and I was in a completely different space. I was not in my head at all. I wasn't grounded at all. I was in the clouds talking to angels all the time.
Yeah.
So those were things we didn't share.
And
with
that
friends.
tends to be a dynamic for twins, is that one twin has to be the grounded twin.
Yes.
And it allows the other twin to explore the spiritual realm and to be ungrounded in the energies. And then eventually that will flip. As right now, the feminine energy is the one that needs to ground so that the masculine can now explore their spiritual side after they've been grounding us for years.
Yes.
As I'd mentioned earlier, I'd just come out the tail end of spiritual growth. I was taking a breath. I was exhausted and just trying to be in one place. And I could see that she was going through levels of growth of her own, but I just could not participate. I could not follow. I was done. I was spent.
Yeah. And it was meant to be that way.
Yeah. Which we didn't know at the time. We had no idea any of these dynamics. We just thought we had this fascinating love that we'd never experienced, but it wasn't working despite the amount of love.
Right. And this was 20 years ago. So
Exactly.
there wasn't twin flames were not like catchphrases.
Like it is now. Not at all. We'd never heard the phrase back then.
Okay, so you broke up after a year.
We still stayed in touch. It wasn't like we broke up and
that was it.
And that was it. We would still phone each other once in a while or pop a note underneath the door or go out for a supper. But it would steadily decline and did so for about another year
Yes.
after that. And then you eventually moved.
Well, actually, no, it was more when you ended up in a solid relationship.
Yeah.
We were still on again, off again for quite a while. And by this time, I was also going through huge traumas. I ended up getting evicted because I didn't have a job and had no money and was so in the clouds with spirituality that I was not human per se.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, then I moved, but we were still in touch because I was at one of your previous employees' places. Her and I became friends.
Right.
And he would come over to visit, and then I'd end up going to his place for the night, and this would happen every 2 weeks or so. The magnetic pull was always, always there. Even though he was just like, "What is wrong with you? I mean, you're homeless. You don't even have a job." But yet he couldn't. Even though the logical part of him was like, I don't understand you at all. He couldn't fight the love part.
Yeah.
It was still there. In fact, that's one of the comments he made years ago is, no matter everything that we've been through, we can't kill this love. No matter how much we try, we cannot seem to kill the love that we have.
Right. So even though, because this is a thing with twins, you can be so different, and you think, my twin is never going to accept that if he knew I did this. But
yes.
The more authentic we are, actually, our twin really does accept us and love us despite anything that we can do.
Totally.
Despite, we may be total opposite belief systems, living a totally different life, but they still love us.
Well, and I was terrified that he wouldn't. I mean, I felt completely ashamed. I was always the goody two-shoes of my family. I was a registered nurse, and here I was homeless and no job. And I thought, there's no way he's going to want to be with me. I'm a complete loser. I'm now working at 7-Eleven as a registered nurse. He comes into 7-Eleven to greet me one night just to say hi. And I'm like, oh my God, really? You have to come here? I'm in my stupid little smock and this is how you're going to see me? You're never going to want to see me again after this. But it didn't change. He loved me no matter what.
If I didn't want to see you then, I wouldn't have come to 7-Eleven to see you.
Yes.
I still cared about you. Absolutely.
Yes. And that's the point, is a twin flame loves you no matter what. No matter how horrible your life may look, no matter how bad you've done or what you've done, the love is still there.
Right. Okay, so this went on for a few more years. And then, Rob, you get into a relationship with someone else.
Yes, I got into a karmic relationship that had its trials and tribulations. It was a 12-year relationship, so it would be probably 3 or 4 years after Angie and I had the sit down, you have to go, Angie. I got involved in a relationship that was probably required for me to grow and see. This person was a very strong spiritualist, in her own way, and she was also very dominating. Not trying to say that as a negative term, but it caused me in many ways to shut down spiritually, because whatever I believed in was not the path that relationship was on. I was very, very subservient in that relationship. I quite gave in to other directions. Mm-hmm. I even gave in to the point that I stopped dreaming. I went years without being able to remember a single dream. And I used to dream every night.
Wow.
So in dealing with that situation where I allowed myself to be oppressed, in some ways it caused me to also want what Angie and I had before. I started to do comparisons in my mind. The missing of Angie, not without getting out of control to the point that it was affecting the relationship I was in, was burning ever stronger in the background of my mind. And mm-hmm. I started to definitely never miss the opportunity to text Angie a happy birthday or a Merry Christmas, just to stay in touch. I started to need that conflict just for my inner self, mm-hmm. not really my external self.
And after he got into a solid relationship, I had to finally let him go enough to move on, which was so hard because he was always there, always. Every relationship I had, I compared them to him, and they just never measured up. There was just something always not there on a soul level. But I finally accepted we weren't meant to be together, so I moved on. I got married. That only lasted 3 years because there was no soul connection. So I had many different relationships. Oddly enough, I've had 4 Robs in my life. So it was like the universe was like, okay, a Rob is who you're going to be with. So, yes.
Or maybe it was what you were putting out. Because you
Could
kept
be.
thinking, Rob,
I never
love
thought
Rob,
of it that
Rob.
way. That's
and
funny.
so you brought in some Robs.
I never thought of it that
Just
way.
not
That's
the right Rob.
Yeah.
But you got closer every time.
I did so.
In theory,
was fascinating.
In theory, I'm Rob number 2.
Yes, he's Rob number 2. So it wasn't until many years later, 17, he had called me. He was actually in between jobs, which is very rare for him because he's always working. So he was in between jobs, and he actually had the time to actually call instead of just send a text. So he called me and said, let's go out for your birthday. So he took me out for lunch, and it was like the weirdest thing. We had met other times in those times where he was in his 12-year relationship, but there was just nothing there. It was almost like, what did I ever see in him? I mean, no offense, but he was just, that soul connection was gone. So I was just like, I don't know how we ever dated. But that lunch meeting was like this. It was how I describe it. It was like a switch turned back on in my soul. It was like the switch went back on, and it was like, okay, I see you again. I see your soul. And then I could not get him out of my mind. And I was in a relationship, he's in a relationship, and I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? Like, why is this happening now? We've had 17 years apart. Why now? So I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I was Googling on the internet. I was just trying to find answers, and I typed in soulmate, not even knowing, as I say, what I was looking for, and I found the words twin flames, and it just hit me. Before I even read anything, it was like my soul recognized the words.
Yeah.
And I started reading, and it was like everything that it said was us. The stages, everything we've been through, the weird meeting, the instant connection. It was like everything just described our whole life.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, what do I do with this information? He's in a relationship. I'm in a relationship. And neither of our relationships were just flings. They were, his was a 12-year. It was like a marriage. Yeah. Mine was a 6-year relationship with a very strong soulmate who I actually have never felt the same love with except for him. So it was a very confusing time of what do I do with this information? I don't want to wreck anybody's lives. I'm not a home wrecker. So I kept it quiet for a long time. I didn't tell him. We were just starting to also develop a friendship. We were actually starting to go out every once in a while for a lunch or a dinner and texting every once in a while. So the last thing I wanted to do was, hey, by the way, we have this weird connection. I'm like, no, I'm not telling him. I'm not saying anything.
What were your feelings at this time, Rob, after you took Angie out for her birthday?
All it did was just continue to amplify. I realized that I was right way back in the beginning, that I would always miss Angie. But really, in my mind, I'll call it my 3D mind, I just called her the one that got away, and that I would have to continue on with my life without her. I didn't have any thoughts or aspirations about getting back together with her during this time. She was doing a bunch of learning that I knew nothing about. So I was just plodding on with my life with this ever-nagging missing and longing. And feeling guilty for it because I'm in a relationship with someone else. Like, you naturally do defend where you're at.
Yeah.
But still, thoughts are thoughts. And the feeling of love for Angie was always not even annoying, but always there.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so over this time, it seems like maybe, and we talk about this in Twin Flames groups and things, sometimes you almost go through like a disconnection from your twin for a little bit because there's things that you have to go through and it's just like, it can be too intense to always be connected to them.
Absolutely.
But then this meeting like really shifted something again in the energies to reopen it, and so you're both on this journey once again, thinking about each other. And was there telepathic connection and things between you?
For me, it started very soon after our meeting that turned my soul back on, and after I started reading about twin flames. I hadn't even really read much about the telepathic, because when I discovered twin flames, there wasn't a lot out there at all. I pretty much exhausted my search. I would type in every different combination of twin flame this, twin flame that, just to find anything new. And there wasn't a lot out there. So I had to go within. I would meditate and ask within. And it was then that he started talking to me telepathically. And I truly thought I was crazy, which I know now is so part of the path. If you don't think you're crazy, then lucky for you. But most of us at some point totally think we're nuts.
In the early days when you first met, you didn't necessarily feel telepathic.
No.
But were there maybe were times where you would like think the same thought or like finish each other's sentence?
We definitely finished each other's sentences and just had such a connection. Just, it was more physical. Like we would, when we lay down together, not even like a sexual thing, but just laying down together, we could feel like our energies would become one. It was the coolest thing. And we have that back again, which is amazing.
The skin blurs, and you just feel like one blob of person. Because you don't really feel quite human. You've got too many legs, too many arms. But where the skin touches, you can't feel that connection. It's like they pass through each other. So, yeah. We've always had that.
We have time, Rob. Tell us about the analogy that we spoke about last night about what union is.
Yeah, that is something that I've really started recognizing the past couple of months. Now that we're together, I've noticed that instead of being just a singular person and I can feel 360 degrees around myself like I'm in the middle of a circle, sometimes when I'm with Angie, she's right beside me. And I feel like that portion I can't feel through anymore, except for what passes through Angie and then comes to me. So I feel slightly uncomfortable that I'm not feeling completely around me, but it's also interesting that Angie's like a giant antenna beside me that's capable of catching more energy than that side of me could ever do.
Yeah, and you're working together. Like,
yes.
This is what union is. And I think there might be some misconceptions actually out there. People say, like, my twin called and we're in union. Well, I mean, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble or make them feel bad, but I think if we really want to say what union is, it's like what you guys are talking about. Like, you are becoming one and you're getting energy and information, and it's passing through each other. Like your minds are working in conjunction.
Yes. So often he'll say what I'm thinking. I'm about to speak it, and he'll say, and I was just going to say that. So yes,
because you're working telepathically.
Totally.
Yes. I never notice this telepathic connection. I don't trigger it. It just happens all without me. She'll all of a sudden know stuff that, or know that I've communicated with her, and I haven't tried to do it. It just happens. Totally without my permission, and I've started to become more comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. But I've never really known this much before, but in the past year, I've come to understand that that's how it works for me. Other people can do it by trying. I'm slightly jealous.
That's amazing and beautiful, though. So, okay. So go back and you're in your karmic relationships and you're learning about twin flames and you've been thinking about each other. You're starting to get some telepathy, Angie. What were you feeling, Rob? Were you getting anything like that at that time?
No, I wasn't. Angie was doing that learning and I was not on that path.
Okay.
I was not. I was still quiet. Missing her, but quiet. Just definitely not wanting to step backwards away from taking her out for a birthday lunch. I definitely wanted that. But I could say I was a little concerned on a 3D level about where this was going, because when you're starting to get closer to someone else, when you're in a relationship that you're already in, it should bother you.
Yeah, well, you can't have two
Can't have two
relationships.
relationships. But no idea where it's going, and it's really thoroughly in my mind understanding that at some point Angie was going to get just a little closer to me, and that's it. That was what I was thinking.
You're thinking you were gonna like put a
Put
wall up.
Put a wall up. Yep. When a relationship ends, leave it ended. That was a philosophy that I guess I've changed.
Yeah. Well. Okay, and so then what happened, Angie?
So yeah, for me, he starts telling me things telepathically, and the first thing he said was, "I really want to be with you, but I don't feel as spiritually advanced as you." And first of all, I'm trying to like process all this and go, is this just me? Like, am I making this up? But I'd done enough work on myself, and that's the other key I wanted to bring up is in the 17 years apart, again, I had no idea about twin flames. I had no idea the dynamic would come back again. I just had this draw that I had to constantly work on myself. Any bit that came up, I worked on. I faced it. I looked at it. I just had this inner drive that I had to face everything. So I had done a lot of healing. So I had learned a lot of skills, and one was going within, getting answers. So I would meditate and go within and go, okay, I know this isn't my voice. This is not me. But yet you still feel crazy because you're like, okay, well, our society tells us if you're hearing voices, you're schizophrenic. So I started talking back to him, and I started realizing, no, this is real, because I couldn't get these answers for myself. These aren't answers I would give myself. So we would start having all these conversations, and I would reassure him, and I'd say, oh my God, you are beyond spiritual. Like, you need not worry. So for 6 months, it was very intense. I would meditate, and I was guided to send him love. So I would just pour love into him. I would see it going into every single cell of his body. I would do this twice a day in meditation. I was talking to him telepathically constantly. In fact, sometimes I started realizing I'd be outside walking and I'd be like talking out loud, and then somebody would go by and like, oh, I'm one of those people. I can stop. I have to talk to him by hand. I can't talk out loud. So it was funny that it became so natural to talk telepathically that I would do it out loud. I'd be chatting with my car, and so very intense. 6 months we would do this, and of course all on 5D, but 3D we were just starting to develop a friendship, and I would find it so weird that at times he would text me and we'd have a little conversation, and I would just start getting engaged, and I'm like, oh yes, this is nice, I'm like so enjoying having you back, and then he'd disappear and he wouldn't answer my text and he wouldn't be there, and I couldn't feel his energy.
There was my little wall I put up. That's enough being in touch. Thank you very much.
And I had no idea, but I was just like, why won't you respond to me?
Because you were getting close to crossing a line, right?
Right. Yep.
So I would be pulling and pulling, and finally when I'd just have to surrender, because I was like, okay, he's not coming back, whatever. I'd let go, and then all of a sudden he'd be there instantly. So I finally started realizing, oh, okay, if I let go, he comes back. So it was an awesome experience too, to learn the whole let go. Like Dio often says, let go. And everybody says, it's true. You have to let go. And what the let go is you have to surrender the need and the want for them. You have to go within and get whatever you're needing from them, get within you. Find it within. And then when you get it there, then they come back. Because they feel you, even though you don't know, and they don't know consciously, they know on the 5D.
Yes, they know when you're chasing on the 5D.
They are so aware.
And it's a hard concept for people to understand what let go is, because like you're saying, it's not saying I don't want that person, or I'm not going to be with that person. It's not needing them. You're fulfilling yourself. Yes.
Not needing the attachment to them or something from them. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can enjoy. It's not giving up and saying, well, forget it, I'm never going to talk to them again. It's letting go of the need to hear from them or be with them or have anything from them.
So like when he doesn't text you back, you get over the trigger
Yes.
It's like, okay, well, I guess he's just busy. You don't take it personally. You don't take it as an affront to you that they didn't text you, because a lot of people get really upset.
They do, yes. And I used to too.
And from your end, the reason why you wouldn't text back is just because you felt you were maybe crossing a boundary.
Yes, I could only be in touch so much with Angie before I felt too close of a draw for what was comfortable for me in 3D, being in another relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I always love the story that Angie tells about when she got brave enough to tell me about twin flames.
Yes, let's talk about that.
So 6 months I was doing so much work with him, with me, with our energies. I would see our chakras aligned. I just did whatever I felt guided within, and from the few videos that were now out on twin flames and everything I was reading. So then finally one night, it was oddly enough, like it is now, full moon, and I was out walking my dog, and I was just told this full moon is very significant for you. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And the next day I was told, tell him. And I'm like, no. I'm fighting everything within me. I had been told to tell him for 1.5 years, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not wrecking his life, and I'm not wrecking mine. Finally, it was the strongest push. Like, you have to do this. This is very important. So I finally got very courageous, and I just texted him, and I said, if there was something to explain everything we've been through, the weird way we met, the connection we had, all of the dynamics, would you want to know? And his answer was, sure. I don't see why not. So I spent the whole next day, little by little, giving him little chunks and little bits, just feeling him out. Like, are you ready for this? I'm not ready for this. Are you sure you're ready for this? And finally, by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we'd been talking since 7 in the morning through text. All I said to him is, I found this information, and it's called twin flames. If you feel the need to read about it or learn about it, whatever. So I didn't tell him anything about it. I didn't explain it, because I thought, that's not for me to say. Mm-hmm. It's not for me to tell him what we are other than the words, and he can figure it out. After I told him, I literally sat and bawled, because I thought, he's never going to speak to me again.
This is a major fear, and a lot of people have it, and you have to walk through it, because you think, if I tell them, they're going to think I'm crazy, and they're going to walk away. Yes. This is part of that being authentic that I talked about, and you think, God, if I say that, my twin's not going to accept me. So you have to walk through that fear, and that's letting go.
Yes.
Because you're like, I've got to say this, and even if it means he doesn't talk to me again, at least I've said my piece about it. Exactly. And I feel like I did what I could do.
And that's exactly the place I had to get to is, okay, here's my truth. If you can take it, great, and if you can't, I guess I've lost you. And I was devastated, absolutely devastated, but I knew I had to do it. Like you say, the authenticity. I had to be real, not only for him, but for me, and to speak my truth. So I just sat and bawled, thinking, okay, that's the end. We've just started developing a friendship again, and I won't even have that. He's never going to speak to me again. Less than an hour later, he texts me and says,
I still love you.
And I was bowled right over.
I hadn't got any information from her, like she said, but even from way back when we first met, I was trying to get closer to her, to give her the opportunity to express what's going on inside of her. It all fell apart because she just never could describe what was going on in a way that I could understand. And so all of a sudden, to hear that she had a bunch of answers, I wasn't thinking about getting back in a relationship with her. I was just happy that she had found some peace. Of course I wanted her to tell me about twin flames, whatever this would be. So I was just excited to hear all about it, not quite realizing that it would have an impact on me as well. She sent me what I could call mega texts, many thousand-word texts describing twin flames and what it's about and why we gone through this and everything else. And through all those years of knowing Angie, I had all these bits and pieces of information. And that couple of days of texting about what Twin Flames was about hit me on every possible level that I existed in, because it made sense to me too. It took all those pieces of a puzzle and gave him a home. All those bits and pieces of information all of a sudden could connect together. And I completely agreed with her that a twin flame experience is what we'd been going through for all those years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so without even understanding the concept of twin flames, it resonated with him.
And
too.
it unlocked something
Yeah.
within you.
Yes.
So as soon as I heard it, it made sense. I didn't have to think about it for weeks or months or years. It was just a giant aha moment.
Yeah. And the neat thing is, I told him all of this it was a Saturday, November 8th. And the actual awakening for him came on November 11th.
11/11.
11/11. We actually celebrate every year 11/11 now. We truly do, because it was a significant day in our history.
I call that an anniversary date of this awakening for me. And on the 11th, I don't think we crossed that piece of information that 11/11 was important.
Yeah.
But it ended up being very important
shared.
for me. It's just one of the many reasons why I know I'm a twin flame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
That was the beginning of the re-beginning.
Okay, so you had karmic relationships to solve, though.
Oh, yes. Well,
what did you think when he texted back, "I still love you"?
I was so shocked. I could barely think, because I knew it, but I didn't know he knew it consciously. When we would go out the odd time for a supper and we'd hug goodbye, his hugs were like, "I don't ever want to let you go." I could feel that energy. I was very aware of that, but I didn't know he knew that. So I was shocked, but it was also like, well, it's about time you admit this. I already know this. I just didn't know you knew
Your higher
this.
self's been telling me this for over 6 months.
We've been having this conversation for a while. It's about time you figure it out. But still, like, all this stuff going through my head, like, what kind of can of worms have I just opened up too? Because, like I keep saying, we're all both in relationships. Thank goodness mine was pretty much done. We were already in separate rooms on separate floors of the house. We were living amicably, but not in a relationship. But still, we hadn't officially said, okay, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
So, for all intents and purposes, I was still in a relationship. So yeah, I brought up all this stuff of, well, now what?
My karmic relationship was still functioning. It had all the aspects that you would expect in a relationship: the holding hands, the sleeping together at night, making love, sharing experiences almost every weekend, the climbing the mountains that I like to do, and so did she. The relationship was still functioning to the point that she had no idea that over the past couple of years I was considering breaking off the relationship. It took me from November 11th to, well, not that I like to choose important days or anything like that, because the first one I didn't choose, but it was Groundhog Day, February 2nd, after the November 11th.
2-2.
I sat down, her name is Debbie, from my karmic relationship, and
got your tissues.
I actually didn't know this was a conversation across the living room. And to her absolute complete surprise, I said the relationship had to change, and it had to change, and it had to end. And it hurt me at that point in my life like nothing had ever hurt me before. Letting Angie go was something I knew I had to do. But this hurt me because I don't like to walk around this planet hurting people.
Mm-hmm.
And I always did and still do have a very strong respect for my Debbie. And to hurt her like that was something that I had never done to anybody else in my life. I've hurt people before, but to that level, it was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
It had to happen, though, because I couldn't continue on in that relationship knowing what I knew about twin flames and knowing what Angie's relationship in my life did mean to me and could mean to me in the future. So I had to just choose a moment and drop the axe on that relationship. And I hopefully never, ever, ever have to live through anything like that again. It's not what I'm
it's
on.
Very hard.
It's not what I'm on this planet to do, but it's what I had to do for that time.
So when you guys discovered the concept of twin flames, and so it started to make sense, then did you feel suddenly like, okay, now we can overcome any differences? Because remember, you split up in the beginning because you were having a lot of push-pull and conflict. So what made you think now, well, let's get back together and let's try it and see if we can work it out?
I'd like to start out there with the thought that I had never really thought that we couldn't make it. Even from the very beginning. I had never really wanted to lose the relationship. So to get back together now, I was hoping that more years of experience with life and a little bit more maturity and age and whatnot would have given me better tools to survive with a person who's a very strong empath and has all sorts of energies that I don't quite understand. But I was quite confident that I would have the ability to uphold my end of the bargain without really knowing what that confidence was going to have to do, what it was going to have to look like. But
you're willing to let your wall down?
Well, yeah, the wall was ready to be dropped down, and I also had twinklings and images in my mind of the thought that I had been involved in a long karmic relationship with another very strong spiritual person, possibly so that I could learn more at my own pace, so that I could be more ready to get back together with Angie.
Yes.
I had that realization that it was a necessary time apart with the person I was with in preparation for possibly getting back together. I knew that we were going to get back together. I didn't know we were going to get back together to the point of actually getting married, but I had that hunch. We had actually talked about getting married nearly 20 years ago when we first met. I didn't think we would miss a second opportunity. Still didn't know how we were going to get there.
And for me, I had no doubts that we could make it work because of how different he was and how different I was. We talked a lot about, when we first got back together, we started talking about, okay, what blew us up the first time? What didn't work? And why does it work now? And we could see the dynamics. I am still to this day so grateful for his karmic relationship, Deb, because she helped him grow in ways that I couldn't, but in ways that he needed in order to come back to me. Mm-hmm. When we were together 20 years ago, just the fact of me fluffing his plant's aura was too traumatic for him. That just sent him over the deep end. Now he was able to hear the concept of twin flames and what that really meant and souls, and he was so much more open, and she was able to help him grow in those ways. So he was ready, but I was also ready because I'd had 17 years of working on every ounce of crap that I had to deal with in my life. And I was much stronger. When we met 20 years ago, I had no idea who I was. I had no idea that I was an empath, that I was highly sensitive, that I had intuitive abilities, that I needed things that I didn't know I needed. Now I was very aware and solid in who I was and able to say to him, okay, I know you're social, I'm not. This is what I need if we're going to be together. I can only handle 3 social nights a week, and this is what I can do. If you need more, have fun. I was very solid in who I was, which is, again, a very important part of the twin flame dynamic.
Yeah, I hope that people really get that. You have to be whole, and you have to be able to know what you want and ask for what you want, and it's not about being selfish. It's about finding balance.
Being aware.
I would also like to reiterate that I am very solid in my spiritual self. I'm sometimes probably overly humble about where I am in my spiritually self, because I see so many people who are on growth paths that I perceive I have not got to yet, even though some people tell me I've been beyond that. But it's very, very important for both people to be solid and understanding and comfortable and connected with where they're at.
Yes. So we're not glued at the hip. We don't do everything together. He has a life, I have a life, and we have a life together because we are whole people by ourselves. And I think that is a huge key. You have to know who you are. You have to be solid in yourself. And you have to be able to live by yourself.
Mm-hmm. So every step of work that you have to go through really serves a purpose.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Things happen faster nowadays. I really feel sorry for people who listen to us say that, yeah, we were apart for 17 years.
I know, I was just thinking that.
Because it doesn't have to be that way. Yeah.
Things happen faster nowadays.
Yes.
But
the energy is causing shifts faster.
And all of the twin flames now that are awakened cause more shifting as well. So all of us as a dynamic are helping things shift so that everything's faster.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be 20 years for other people
but you do have to do the work.
You still have to do the work. Whether it takes 3 years or 5 years or 8 years, or in some cases, maybe people have to wait 20 years. But it's important to do the work and not be quite so concerned about how much time it takes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also to do the work for the motivation to make yourself whole, not to do the work for the motivation to get your twin flame back.
Right, because it's not the same vibration.
No. And also a point I really feel a need to express to twin flames is your work is not done the minute you get to union. It's not like I'm magically completely healed. I still have stuff I'm working on. In fact, to be very authentic, I just saw our counselor. We have a counselor that we go see. I just saw him 2 days before we came to this conference. Mm-hmm. So I'm still working on stuff. So the more work you do on yourself before and heal, the better off you are. But make it your motivation to heal because you want to heal, not because you want to get your twin flame back.
Right.
I didn't get to where I was and where I am and where I'm going to be going to. I didn't get there only because of Angie's influence. I did a lot of work on my own.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that work, I feel, must continue. I would walk for hours and hours and hours in the mountains by myself. Just me and the trees and the planet, and I feel connected that I would be in a little bubble with almost what would feel like the whole earth. I can't just let that go because I'm in union with Angie.
Right.
It's part of what got me to be able to be back in union with Angie and also grow in directions that Angie and I haven't experienced yet together. We still have bits and pieces that she's grown with that I've never been to, and I've been places in spirituality that she hasn't been. So the growth has to continue apart and together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could talk to you guys for hours, and maybe we'll talk again. But we have to go to Twin Flames together now.
Yes.
They're waiting for us. So thank you for sharing your 20-year journey. And I know we're going to be hearing a lot more from you. Angie, you posted something the other day in the groups that was awesome. And I'm going to probably share that on this post for people to read.
Yes.
Yes.
About the top things you've learned in union.
Yes. The top 11 things. Because we're twin flames. It's got to be 11.
So we'll talk to you later, guys.
And thank you.
Yes, thank you for letting us tell our story.